Welcome to this video podcast from the Public Relations Society of America's Delaware chapter. Social media success stories and strategies recorded May 18, 2011, featuring Kim Costas, Community Relations Manager for the Food Bank of Delaware, Felicia Pullum from the Communications Team in the Delaware Governor's Office, and Phil Woods, founder of SBP Marketing, LLC, and the creator of WhereInDE.com. Introducing the program is Dan Tipton, president of PRSA Delaware and president of Tipton Communications.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started with the program. I have to say that every time I come into this room, it reminds me of an event in my life. My wedding reception was here, or as my wife would say, a day of infamy. I remember nothing about it, but it was a great time for everyone else. I think I passed out somewhere over there. But anyway, from that day, now I have 4 kids, and 2 of them came home this week from college. My oldest boy came home from Penn State just long enough to, 1, crash my car, and 2, steal my black belt, leaving me with a brown belt with my gray suit this morning. So thank you, John, for both of those events. So if anyone has a car, I'm in the market as soon as the insurance check comes in. A couple of, before we get to the program, have just a few little things to go through. Since you're enjoying yourself so much here, our most fun event of the year is actually not saying anything about the speakers here, but our next event is our happy hour event at the Iron Hill Inn on the riverfront in Wilmington. That'll be June 23rd from 5 to 7 p.m. If you can make it, we'd love to see you all there. It's a great free beer on Nikki.
No.
Yeah, thank you, Nikki.
No.
What is it?
No, but it's free. And
It is free. Appetizers are provided. You're on your own for the bar. It is an open bar if you pay for whatever you get. Two other pieces of business. We're always looking for additional board and committee members for the chapter. We're trying to reinvigorate the board and get some more people involved. A lot of the people who are involved with PRSA Delaware have been involved for quite some time, and we'd appreciate if you want to get more active and help bring this chapter along and achieve new things. We'd love to hear your voice and see you more often. In that same vein, if you haven't already joined the chapter, we'd love to have you as an official member. It certainly helps us to do events like this and to expand our capability of providing services to professionals in the Delaware market. Finally, I'd like to introduce our 2 students today. Actually, they're going to have to come up and introduce themselves. And they are from the University of Delaware PRSA program. If you could come up and tell us a little bit about yourselves.
Perfect. I don't want to trip on any cords. Sorry. Hi, all of you. My name is Abby Straller. I'm currently the president of our PRSA chapter at the University of Delaware, and I'm going to serve as the president again next year. So I'm really excited. We've done a lot of great events. I know that I've met some of you through working with our different networking events and having you guys speak at some of our general meetings, and I'm very thankful for that. We're always kind of in the market for new speakers, just anyone interested in sharing their experiences. So I look forward to meeting all of you and hopefully working with some of you in the future. So thanks. I'm going to turn it over to Sarah.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Blash. I am a sophomore at the University of Delaware and the incoming vice president for PRSSA at the university. And I will be working closely with all of you, hopefully. As Abby said, we're trying to get as many speakers as possible since our students love the feedback from the professional world. So if you guys have any free time in the future, please let us know, and we'd love to see you at our meetings. Thank you.
The reason we're all talking in microphones and being taped is thanks to Mr. Levetkin here, who is giving us his complimentary services by podcasting our meeting today. I'm going to now bring up Nikki Lavoie, if you're not familiar with her, and she is going to introduce our speakers today. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, good afternoon. So we're really excited about the program today. You probably have attended a couple of social media events and programs in the past. They're very popular now as people are really starting to get online with social media outlets. However, today we have a little bit different twist on it. What we're going to do is we have 3 social media mavens. These are people who are really using social media in a dynamic way to increase business, to solve customer problems, to meet the needs of their organizations. And what they're going to do is they're going to share a story with you about how they have done just that. And then one of our speakers, Phil Woods, will wrap it up by also providing a few strategic tips to help you on your way as well. So we got a great program for you. Up first, we have Kim, I'm going to say Costas, forgive me, with the Food Bank of Delaware. A little tip to embarrass Kim because people like to embarrass me. Kim was just featured in Delaware Today magazine as a super single. I was also in the magazine, but I'm going to choose to just embarrass Kim for the moment. And then we next up we'll have Felicia. Felicia's with the governor's office. She's the communications staffer and policy advisor there. And you probably recognize her with that little asterisk F that she's doing for the governor's office. It's become very popular. And she's actually taught me a lot about social media, as has Phil Woods, who will be our last speaker. And Phil is just involved in everything social media. He's sort of an entrepreneur when it comes to social media as well as in business. And he has a lot to share as well. So you've all read their detailed bios, so I'll leave it at that, and I will have Kim come up first. I don't know if you want to sit or because we're kind of tied.
I can stand.
It's up to you.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me out today. I always look forward to the opportunity to speak to people about social media because I think it really plays an important role in the whole communications field. Things are changing, and it's a very exciting time to be a communications professional. And I'm also very passionate about the work that we do at the Food Bank of Delaware. So anytime I get to share about both of these, I'm excited. So I know that we all know it's important, and we probably have looked at Twitter or Facebook. So I'd like to focus more on how it's helped us and share with you a story. I know that money talks if you're working for a for-profit or a nonprofit. So I'm going to share a story on how social media helped the Food Bank of Delaware win a $10,000 grant from Pepsi Refresh. Before I start with that, I just want to stress the importance of how with social media, it's important to build relationships and to tell your story, whether you're a not-for-profit or a for-profit. I don't like to use the platforms as a time to just say, hey, we're the food bank and we need money, so click here and donate today. I prefer to tell stories and share images so people can see the work that we're doing in the community, and then from there they can decide on their own whether it's something that they want to support. And fortunately, a lot of people have been compelled to help because of the basic need of food here in Delaware. And about 1 in 4 Delawareans depend on our services, so it's needed now more than ever. So Pepsi Refresh, we've been really lucky to work with people like Phil and Felicia and the governor, and I'm sure the name Ken Grant and Rodney Jordan have been thrown out with they're some of the social media mavens in Delaware, so they've been really helpful in terms of helping us to build our network of followers, whether it's through Facebook or Twitter, YouTube. So if you're looking to get involved in it, those are some people that you definitely would want to reach out to, and I know that they're always looking to provide support for people that want to build their network. So we started using social media back in February of 2009, so we've been doing it a little while now, and it has taken time to develop the networks, but because of the relationships we've built, people have trusted us and they want to help us. So about a year ago, Pepsi had a program where people from the public could pick nonprofits and vote for them to receive a grant. We didn't do any press releases with this. It was strictly through social media. There was about 10 food banks competing in one category, and there were food banks from New York City, Connecticut, major media markets. Delaware was one of the smallest food banks on the list. So
when we were in that category, we were a little apprehensive that, oh, we're never going to win $10,000. We're competing against all of these larger food banks, and they have a lot more clout within their media market. So we were like, hey, we'll do it anyways and see where it goes. So we started tweeting about it. We started posting it to Facebook. People were retweeting. They were sharing the Facebook story. The money specifically was for our backpack program, so we did a lot of blogs by putting images of kids that actually sent in pictures to us thanking us for the food that they received over the weekend through the backpack program. So we shared with the public those images, how the food is helping the kids over the weekend, and people really were moved by the images that the children that they did for us. So it made it easier to encourage people to vote for the food bank. So throughout that, it probably was about a month. At one point we were in first place, and we were all just shocked because the New York City Food Bank was like number 5, and we're like, yeah, Delaware is awesome in terms of social media. So we just kept tweeting and blogging and Facebooking, and eventually the News Journal picked up about it from just tweets that we posted, and they actually did a little write-up about it. So that was really nice to see that it seems now you don't always have to go the traditional route with the press release. Sometimes they're just picking up on things through some of the things that are going on social media. So I think that story is really important and shows the power of the tool, but you have to use it often. You can't just tweet once a week and expect to get some sort of results. I'm tweeting several times a day. I tweet on the weekend if I need to from my phone. So you have to really be committed to Twitter or Facebook. Facebook I do a little bit less, but with tweeting I like to keep a presence in the community. I guess I'll open the floor up to any questions. I'm not sure where everybody's experience with social media is, so I kind of just wanted to share the story so you can see that it really is working.
Hey, Pam, why don't we have everybody ask questions
At the end?
conclusion
Okay.
of all the speakers?
That
We'll have
works.
everybody
Okay, sounds good. All right, thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks for having me here today. I really appreciate it, and thanks everybody for coming. Some of you might have seen this slide from when the governor spoke, so this is a little bit outdated. And fortunately, we have a little bit cooler picture now if you go to our profile. But so I often tweet with my colleague Brian for @GovernorMarkell. And most people call me asterisk F, as Vicki noted, but I prefer star F because it's easier to say, right? I mean, so this is what it looks like. We put the little asterisk F in the corner. You can see how that comes out at the end. And I think we've gotten a lot of praise from people in the social media community for doing that. So when I tweet, I put the star F there, and when Brian tweets, he does the same. So that means when the governor does tweet, you know it's actually him. And I'm actually a little bit surprised that more people don't do this, whether it's for CEOs or companies, because most people assume, especially when you're tweeting for a governor, that the governor's not actually doing it himself. And so we don't really gain anything by pretending to be the governor, because most people just don't believe it. And so by saying and honestly, transparently saying who it is that's actually doing the tweeting, we get credit for that. And then we get the bonus of people believing him when he's the one who's tweeting. And the final thing that we don't usually talk about is that it also leaves some room for deniability. So if I retweet something which turns out to be like a communist rally or some sort of crazy thing like that, then it won't be quoted in the News Journal that the governor said that this is a great event you should go to. But that also allows, on the one hand, in all joking aside, it allows us to say, when the governor didn't say something, and if something goes wrong, he won't be blamed for it. But on the positive side, that lets me take a few more risks and try to be a little bit more interesting or funny, and not worry so much if my sense of humor doesn't always match with the governor's, who also has a fantastic sense of humor. So some of you may know Maya Pavesa, Maya Riguru. She's got 20-something odd followers, so many more than the governor has, actually. And so I just wanted to tell a little bit story that starts with a tweet that she sent. So she didn't send this tweet to the governor. She sent this, oh wait, it's like automatically rolling. Oh, I didn't mean for that to happen. This could be fun then. I'm going to have to speak really fast. Here's the tweet. And so I clicked on the link to this photo. And this was just sent to the NetDE community. And so I found that through my monitoring. And here was the sinkhole that she tweeted about. It's not so impressive. And, oh, thank you. Thank you very much. On this screen, it looks really big and kind of frightening. But then when it's on my mobile device, I was not really impressed. I'm like, oh, it's this little teeny hole. Okay, so I sent it to DelDOT to ask them if this was actually a serious problem that we should be concerned about. And so this is the response that I got from DelDOT. Yes, sinkholes can be serious. Fortunately, most Delaware sinkholes are not quite this bad. But I learned a lot. Here's some pictures of sinkholes that you can enjoy. So this one, so basically the sinkholes in Delaware, I learned a little bit through this process. Often, some of them, you may know this, but in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, when they were doing constructions on houses, often the contractors would just dig pits and put all the debris in the pits. So, and this created sinkholes because it would rot over time. You'd get gas, and the water, everything would sink down. But DelDOT does not usually have to deal with this kind of sinkhole because it's on property as opposed to roads. So they would tend to deal more with this kind of sinkhole. Thank you, Nikki. So this kind of sinkhole is created through leaks underground. And so what they do, the first thing they do, next slide, is they send out someone from DelDOT to investigate and see if it poses an immediate threat to safety or a potential threat to safety. And they'll put up cones or barrels, you can see there, to make sure that people don't fall in the sinkhole or hit it with their cars or something, while they investigate the problem, determine what the cause is, and decide on the priority for fixing the sinkhole. So they did put out cones for this one, and as you can see, Maya alerted us as soon as she saw that the cones had been run over by somebody. So DelDOT put out another cone, which was also run over, right over there. But so she kept us updated. So all through Twitter, she was citizen action out there monitoring it. And the next one shows, after she thought that the hole was getting a little bit bigger, she took this picture to show, I'm not sure what size shoe she wears, but you can kind of gauge the size of the sinkhole from that. And we were also treated to seeing her new pedicure. So she kept us up to date, and then finally, let's look at the next slide. She let us know when the temporary patch had been put on. So there's still some stages that would follow after this, but this obviously looks a lot better, and she followed it right from the beginning to the end. So does anybody here know how many sinkholes DelDOT deals with every year in Newcastle County alone? Oh, that's not good guess. All right, next slide. 500. 500. So it's a big number, anyways. And I think a lot of times when we were thinking about getting into social media, and I think when other people were thinking about it as well, they might get worried about the volume of tweets that might come in. And certainly, like I do spend a lot of time, sometimes late at night, sometimes early in the morning, reading through tweets and monitoring. But we're looking at the scale of these problems, and if I got these tweets about a sinkhole, well, how many sinkholes are there in Delaware? 500 just in Newcastle County? Does that mean I'm going to get 500 people every year tweeting me about sinkholes? Well, fortunately, in the last year and a half, we've only gotten one. So while we were very concerned about the volume at first, it turns out to be much more manageable than we anticipated. And so I think this is my next slide. Is the last one. And I thought it'd be worth talking about a couple of the pros and cons, because this story, while I found it very interesting as I was dealing with it, it's not like a major social issue. We have not, the governor's office did not save the world by getting involved in this. And so to kind of think about what we did gain from this, on the one hand, the pros, their letter A, customer service in public. I think most communications people know that if you're demonstrating in public that you can respond to people and that you're listening and that you want to take care of their needs, that's obviously good public service or good customer service, and it's good to show that you're doing this. But on the con, there is some embarrassment. Now the governor's office is tweeting about a sinkhole. What happens if in 6 months this sinkhole opens up and a car falls in it? I mean, there's a little bit of a risk there, so we do have to kind of keep that in mind. And it's something that we all have to think about while we're tweeting. And obviously from our point of view, it's more important to try to get these problems solved. But there is always, from the PR point of view, some risk there. Another pro is we're dealing with opinion leaders. Looking at the numbers that we get, clicking on our links and visiting our site through Facebook, we get many, many more people through Facebook than we go through Twitter. But I mentioned earlier that Maya has about 20,000 followers, and there's other people too who have less followers, but who are also very active in the community. So they're not just tweeting. These people who are on Twitter don't just exist on Twitter. I mean, maybe some of them do, but they're out in the community talking to people, doing things, and it's like a self-selected group of people who are interested in sharing information. And so reaching them, even though it's a smaller audience, the multiplier effect, I think, is often bigger than what we see on Facebook. It can be, on the con side, it is a little bit of a time sink. I mean, obviously, we have a whole list of things to do that we've got to get to, and then now we're seeing tweets about things that normally DelDOT would be dealing with. And like I said, they deal with 500 of these a year. They're professionals when it comes to fixing sinkholes. And so they know how to deal with it, whereas, that's definitely not something that I have ever really dealt with in the past. So that's something to kind of weigh how to manage the time and to think about how to do that. And then staying on the con side, I put micromanagement and meddling for C. And I'm sure that my colleagues at DelDOT don't view me as a micromanager or meddler. And I know they were fantastic through this whole thing and also giving me additional information for this presentation. They were wonderful. But when you have the governor's office or the head of the communications office reaching out to departments, other departments to ask them questions about something that's kind of their daily work, that can change their way of prioritizing issues. So if they have a big sinkhole that they're dealing with or they have some other major problem, I don't want them to prioritize this smaller problem just because we're the ones who asked for it. I want to make sure that they know that they should look at the problem carefully, analytically, and make the decision based on that, rather than based on the fact that I exchanged tweets in public about this. So that's something where I think people can often get worried and feel that just because we're asking about it, we mean that they should prioritize it. And so that is an area where we have to communicate about that. And if you're running the communications department for a company and you're dealing with people in other departments, that's something that you might need to communicate with them about that too. But it also applies even if you're a 5-person organization, nonprofit, because it's easy to let your own priorities get derailed because some people are tweeting about something. Whereas maybe you've put in a lot of time to develop your strategic plan, and it's important to take in that feedback that you're getting from Twitter and Facebook, but you need to kind of also not let it take over what you're doing. And the final point that I want to make is kind of the opposite side of this. I mean, this was a real opportunity to learn how another agency deals, the process that they use for dealing with different types of problems. And so this was an opportunity for me to get to know them better and to learn more about what they do. So I thought that was really useful for me. And then I'm not going to talk about this, but this is just a picture of some of the social media things that the governor's office and the rest of the state of Delaware does. So I hope that you'll check out delaware.gov, sign up for some of these things, and we can talk about it more in the Q&A. Thanks a lot.
My name is Phil Woods. My company is called SBP Marketing. In the last 2 years, I've consulted as a freelancer or independent for a number of different, mostly small businesses, but some organizations as well. So I've helped Grotto Pizza, Red Clay School District, Newark Natural Foods, and a host of small mom and pop businesses do social media. And usually the process in that starts with, well, what do you mean by do social media? So I'm going to give you a little taste of what I'm talking about here and what it takes to really set up a strategy and get strategic. Because the problem with social media is that it's really just too easy to get started. It's easy to set up a Twitter account, and it's easy to set up a Facebook page, and it's easy to set up a YouTube channel. But how do you really use those tools to gather an audience, to get them engaged with your content, and then get them to do whatever the other valuable action is that you want from them, whether that's to volunteer in your organization, to donate money, to buy something, to take part in an event, whatever that might be. So aside from consulting, I also have a couple small projects. So most of the examples I'm going to give you aren't from consultant work. They're from my own projects. I created Where in Delaware. It's a local question and answer site. Since February 2010, we have gathered over 600 local questions and about 3,000 local answers. And we've done that exclusively through social media. There's about 2,200 people connected to the Facebook page for Where in Delaware, and over 3,000 Twitter followers and a couple hundred email subscribers. And they're all just there so that they can answer local questions. So a lot of the data and whatnot I'll give you is from that site because that's the longest case study I have. So the first step is making a plan, and there's a number of internal and external factors that you'll want to consider when you're making this plan. And each bullet point on this sheet should kind of have its own dedicated page in your strategic plan. So the average strategic plan for social media that I make is about 6 to 7 pages long. So the first thing, human resource consideration. Who's going to do this stuff? And that's probably a big consideration for you guys. Obviously, it can be a time suck, like Felicia said. So who's going to do it, and what tools can we use to make best use of this time? Content strategy, what type of content are we going to put out there, and how often? And is it all going to be salesy, or is it going to be informational? And all sorts of different considerations regarding content. Communication strategy, what's the process flow from, here's the thought, here's the piece of content that we want to get out there. Now it has to go out across several different channels. And what are the most appropriate channels for that piece of content? And you as communication professionals know you've got many channels online and offline that you can use. So your content strategy has to, or your communication strategy rather, has to incorporate social in it. Tools and technology. So there's a lot of stuff out there that we can use to improve the workflow of social media, and I'm going to show you one. So how do we leverage these different tools and technology so we don't have to log in independently into Twitter, and then into Facebook, and then into YouTube, and then into our blog, and so on. There's tools that can integrate all of this stuff. What are the success measures? It's not just about the size of your audience. It's not just about web traffic, though they may be components. It's not just about sales. It's not just about revenue, but those may be components. Define in your strategy what is most important so you can track it over time. Externally, what are the proper channels to communicate? I touched on that. Who's the target audience? Who are we trying to reach here? How to attract, engage, and maintain that audience. So yeah, if I can get 2,000 Twitter followers, but no one's reading my stuff, no one's commenting, that 2,000 is meaningless. So that's the big piece, and the buzzword in social media is engagement. Everybody talks about engagement. So define what engagement is. If that's comments, if it's mentions, track those mentions. Who are your influencers and partners? And I forget if it was Kim or Felicia touched on that. Find the people in the community who are going to help champion your cause or champion your message and can help you spread the word. Those are your influencers. So figure out who those are. And then down at the bottom in the middle, I have integration. Integration is really challenging because I'm not just talking about integration into your website. I'm talking about integration into your overall marketing plan, into your strategy. This is like the heart and soul of your brand. So there's integration online, and there's people who build websites, and they say, yeah, this website is integrated with social media. And all they really mean when they say that is that it has sharing buttons like there on the left, or it might have a like box for their Facebook page. That's nice, that's a piece, but there's a lot of other stuff to go along with it. Offline, what do we get? Make sure your social media links are on Facebook, on your business cards, on your brochures. If you have a retail store, they're at checkout, they're on your window, they're in your any other promotional materials that you might put together. They're in your email signature. They're everywhere. Your traditional campaigns that you might be doing on print and radio, you've probably heard there's a lot of, especially big brands, they don't even say visit our website. It's not Nike.com anymore. It's visit us Facebook.com/Nike. And that kind of brings up my next point. If you're going to put your Facebook link out there, make sure you get your Facebook link. The default link that you get on a Facebook page is extremely long and you can't put it on a business card. So make sure in the admin menu of your Facebook page, under basic information, the second line item says username. And that is going to secure the facebook.com/yourname that you want. That's the short name. And make sure it's branded. If your organization or your business is Tom's Pizza, if you can get Tom's Pizza, facebook.com/Tom's Pizza, get it. Don't make it some other, Delaware's Best Pizza or something else that no one's going to remember. Make it branded. So if you look at the Where in Delaware, for example, it's facebook.com/whereinDE, twitter.com/whereinDE, and it's online at whereinDE.com. So it's all very consistent, no matter which channel you're trying to reach that. The tool that I use to try to simplify some of this is HootSuite. There's a couple different of these dashboard programs that are out there. TweetDeck is the other popular one. I prefer HootSuite probably just because it's the first one I started using and I really liked it, and that's that. The only time I've ever used anything else, there was a period for about 2 or 3 days that HootSuite was down when the Amazon cloud failed, so I had to use TweetDeck. But this will see the number of tabs across the top. Those are different accounts that I have. So there's my personal, there's Where in DE, Deals in DE, and a number of others. So I can manage multiple profiles in one place. This is good if you want to share information across multiple organizations or across your personal and your business. And that brings up a whole another world that I'm not even going to touch today. But how can you leverage your personal and your business accounts so that they can actually work well together and play nice together and not just try to keep them completely separate all the time? The other thing you'll see here, I've set up something that I call listening. So I'm not just reading my followers, and this is just Twitter streams that you're seeing here. I'm not just reading everything that my followers put out. I have 3,000 followers. I can't read it all. So I look at a couple things. The first column is my mentions. Sorry, Steve, I'll try to quit moving. Okay. The first column is my mentions. That's anyone who mentions my name. The second column is it's a search box that's set up with a number of search terms. Most of these are local hashtags. Hashtags on Twitter are like little categorization tags. So the NetDE tag, that's $NetDE, is the most common one used in Delaware. So that's the first one, and that's the most popular one on that list. But then there's smaller, less used localized tags that are also used that I like to keep an eye on. So there's Sussex DE, Milford DE, Wilm DE, and a number of other tags that are just to kind of categorize location-specific stuff. So that's the second thing I look at. And then I have a list. In Twitter, you can create lists. So since I have 3,000 followers now, and I try to follow most of them back if they don't look like spammers, I set up a list of what I call my favorite tweets. So there's about 100 people who, maybe they're influencers, maybe they've helped promote something that I do, maybe they do something that I really like. So some of them are just funny. They're the ones that I read, like really, all the time. And they're the ones, especially the ones who have supported me in some way, that I try to give back to them in some way and retweet their message or help spread the word of whatever it is they're trying to promote. So that's how I stay on top of all this stuff. And it takes a little while to set up your dashboard, and there's a number of different ways you can do it. But you can integrate your Foursquare, your blog, your Facebook, your Twitter, and both your personal and your business stuff. Oh, and LinkedIn in a HootSuite dashboard. It just takes a little while to set up, but once you're there and got it set up, it's really nice. So then measuring success, looking at web traffic is an easy thing. I'm a big fan of Google Analytics. If you don't have it installed on your websites, you should do it. It's free. It's the most powerful free analytical tool that you can get for websites. And I set up a custom chart in there for social traffic. And this is Where in Delaware from February 2010 to present. I just pulled this last night. And this is kind of an alarming thing, and I'm trying to figure out what to do about it, or if it's even really a problem. I'm not entirely sure. But the traffic from social sources to whereinDE.com has actually decreased since we've launched the site. And that's despite the fact that I've increased the size of my following substantially. So what does that mean? A lot of the followers really just aren't that engaged in what I'm saying. Maybe. They're not engaged enough to click and go and read. That's all that really means. So, this is just one example of the type of measurement that you can set up to try to define if it's working. Now, for me, and for Where in Delaware, it is important to get traffic to the site because the only revenue source for Where in Delaware is from advertising. So if people aren't visiting the site, my advertisers aren't getting value, and that's going to make it more difficult for me to increase ad revenue over time. So I look at this as a particular challenge, but I've kind of overcome that challenge a little bit because I'm getting more traffic now than ever through search engines and through other sources. So I don't view this as an inherent problem, but I'm keeping my eye on it. So that's just kind of an example. What else I got? Might be it. That's it. How's that?
In case any of you were following, some of us were doing live tweets, my photos wouldn't load for some reason. So there's always a little bit of a breakdown from time to time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask each of the speakers actually to, Phil, come back up, to sit at our lovely panel so that they can ask you a couple of questions before we head out. Does anyone want to start off? Anybody got a question?
Smooth a lot of ruffled feathers sometimes, and frankly, there have been times when I've dealt with some individuals who are, to put it delicately, probably not dealing with a full deck. And I would be concerned that someone, would go on Twitter and basically start a Twitter war with us, or just, promote, bad publicity, or make untrue statements that, like rumors, if rumors spread, people believe it to be true. So how would you, particularly, say, in the governor's office, if somebody has an axe to grind with Governor Markell, do you just ignore it and hope it peters out, or how do you deal with that?
Well, overall, we've gotten actually a lot more disgruntled feedback on Facebook than on Twitter. Okay. And I think also because Facebook allows people to post more things. Occasionally we'll get posts where people may share some very private issues that they need help with very desperately, and are frustrated with the government about. And so we don't really get much of that through Twitter at all. And I think we anticipated that we would have a lot more angry people on Twitter. But we do definitely get some angry people on Twitter. And in fact, there's a bit of a parody of the governor's account that's going on, which they're even parodying the Star app.
With Star FU.
But
you weren't going to say it, I was.
No, I was going to say, but I was excited. I was like, oh my goodness, someone's parodying me. Right. And for the most part, we just continue engaging with people who are positive and constructive.
This is actually something I'm struggling with a lot with the school district, and they're really, really concerned about that. And I don't know any other way to explain it other than you're really at no greater risk of that than you are already. It's just another channel to communicate and actually turn a negative situation into a positive one potentially if you deal with it appropriately. So so I wouldn't really view that as a major obstacle. Sure, it may be a headache, 1 or 2 days a quarter, but for the most part, I don't think you're really going to be challenged by that at all.
I would view it as an opportunity to educate people that may be just ignorant on the subject, and make them aware of how things are and kind of smooth it over that way. And to be quite honest, I think that it'll probably be the least of your worry once you're on it, and you'll see more people that want to advocate on your behalf and say, oh, the blood bank helped to save my life. So I think it'll be more positive, especially within the nonprofit sphere.
Actually, that reminds me of two examples that might be instructive. And one is that sometimes small things can get out of control. Like I just glanced once at this. There's a tweet that I think the guy was actually from Delaware, and he tweeted out a comment, and I think it was a picture of his kid sleeping. And he tweeted out a comment that when it not paired with the picture, people misinterpreted. Like it was an African American gentleman talking about his son, but it was misinterpreted as being like racist against African Americans and turned into a trending topic on Twitter that day. And people were just furious because they were totally taking it out of context. So occasionally things like that could happen, but I think in most cases, in the scheme of things for this guy, it doesn't really matter because most people don't know who he is, and it just sort of disappeared very quickly from what I can tell. But then on the other side of that, for some of you may have heard the story about the Red Cross. So this also has a Delaware connection. And so that was a total mistake, you know, a drunken staffer accidentally tweets from the Red Cross account, and the next thing you know, people across the country are talking about, you know, get a pint of dogfish if you give a pint of blood. So even things that look like big mistakes, sometimes you can turn it into something that ends up being really good.
They actually handled that really well, and if you Google it and find the story and see how they handled that, it was really good. They got on it. They got on Twitter and turned it into a joke, basically, and said, yeah, that was wrong. You're not really getting a pint of blood, though. Wouldn't it be cool if you did? Or something along those lines. Suddenly, what was a big deal wasn't anymore. So.
They did a shout out to Dogfish Head, which was cool.
Yeah.
You know, it was handled very well.
Yeah, it was. They did a great job with that.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Kim, you mentioned two people who like to help with the social media, and I didn't get their names.
Ken Grant and Rodney Jordan, they head up a community, an online community called Network Delaware, and it's NetDE is the hashtag on Twitter, and they are really involved and want to help and make Delaware one of the premier social media states in the country. So, Jordan.
Jordan, okay. Thank you.
And Ken Grant has a blog, dellsocial.com, and there's a lot of information on there.
If you're looking to get involved in Twitter and you don't really know where to start, Constant Contact does free workshops. I think they do it on a pretty monthly basis, and it's free admission, but they ask that you bring a donation to the food bank. So that's just another way that social media has helped us. So if you really want to get into it and you need a very elementary perspective, that's a good workshop to sign up for.
Well, that was my other part to my question, because the time, all of you all mentioned, you said time sync, you said time something or else. What is the time required to manage that? Especially if you're managing a website as well.
That's a question that always comes up, and there's no right answer. There's some people out there. There's people who've written books about social media in 30 minutes a day and different things. I don't know. The right amount is not a quantity of time. It's judged based upon the quality of the interactions. So if you're developing relationships and that takes all day, and it's up to you to be able to justify whether those relationships that you're building are truly worth it or not.
I had a question about voice, and I was hoping all three of you might be able to provide some answer because you're doing it in different ways. But are you having one consistent voice for your organization, or are you getting potentially multiple people to represent their own voice on behalf of the organization?
That's a very good question, and it's actually kind of related. The governor has a blog as well, and we have a lot of the secretaries writing guests because we feel like it's good to have. Well, it's good because then I don't have to write every. Sorry, the governor doesn't have to write every post, and it doesn't. It also it's more interesting when you've got more people talking, and so from the Twitter account. Yeah, cabinet secretaries. The cabinet secretaries. From the Twitter account, we're trying to be a little bit more creative and say some things that are a little bit outside of the governor's voice sometimes. And so, we make sure that we remind him, and he's very eagerly sometimes, and he's monitoring sometimes when I'm not, and he'll call me up and say, hey, what's going on with this? But then, yesterday, or a couple days ago, I don't know if you guys know this, but the Port of Wilmington was featured on Bones last week, the television show on Fox. I know. And I was so excited about that I had to tweet about that. So,
I saw the tweet, but I didn't see you were asking what show first, and I didn't know because we don't have cable, so I'll have to see it on Hulu.
That's where I watched it too, right?
I think that is definitely a challenging question, the question about voice. It's, I can see within an organization why they may want to put multiple people on an account to maybe distribute the workload. But if you try to do it from a logoed account, a branded account, you end up giving a kind of muddy brand experience because one person is going to act different than the other person. So I think Food Bank has actually done pretty well because Kim has really put herself out there as the voice of the Food Bank social media account. And so over time and through interactions, you get to know Kim. You don't get to know the Food Bank. Well, you do get to know the Food Bank.
Through Kim's perspective.
But, right, yeah. And people don't want to deal with an inanimate object. They want to deal with a human. So make your accounts and your presence more than a logo. And maybe that's a fake person. I've seen, who was it? Yeah, Archer Group has Bob Archer, but he doesn't really do so much online anymore. But I was trying to think, I saw a like heating and plumbing company that had Dan the Plumber. Dan the Plumber wasn't a real guy, but he was the one offering up service and maintenance tips. And that was, you felt like you were getting something from a real plumber, which you probably really were, but it wasn't really someone who existed. That's just like a creative way to get around that voice problem.
Yeah, at the food bank, I'm the sole person that handles our account, and I prefer to keep it that way just so that we are consistent in how we're presenting ourselves. And I've heard staff say the wrong talking points all the time, and they all have talking point cards, so that way I know that the information that's getting out is the correct information. But we do have a blog, and through the blog we'll have guest bloggers, but still everything comes through me, and then I post it, and guest by, I'll put who wrote it, but that way I can make sure they use good grammar and things like that. But I think it's important to have one, or if you wanted to go the route of having more than one person, but you need to have somebody that's going to invest the time and effort into it.
Okay, that's it. Can we give a round of applause for
We hope you enjoyed this presentation from the Public Relations Society of America's Delaware chapter. For more information, visit prsadelaware.org. We produce this program in the studios of Professional Podcasts on the web at professionalpodcasts.com. For everyone at PRSA Delaware, this is Steve Lubeck, and thank you for joining us. We'll see you out there on the net. Take good care.